piggy bank, and other coins in my family left around, and I saw some of the old pennies. Their color turned from brown to green. So I wanted to know what is the reason for that. Why pennies turn green? Research. I asked my parents and my sister how pennies turn green. My parents told me about the Statue of Liberty and how it turns into green. I looked on the internet, what are the materials for pennies turning green? My hypothesis, if copper atoms to join oxygen from the air and chlorine from the salt, I think the pennies might turn green or maybe even get shinier on one side. The design of the experiment. All materials are from my kitchen: small cooking plate, paper towel, vinegar, 3 through 5 pennies. Testing the hypothesis. I did the following. Fold a paper towel into fours. Put the towel into the bowl. Fill the towel with vinegar. Put the pennies on top of the wet towel on the plate. Wait overnight and observe the organization of my data. After 5 minutes, the pennies looked normal. 20 hours later, some green in one side got duller. 24 hours, the tops of the pennies are green. 24 hours again, the pennies did not get shinier. My conclusion, my penny turned green because a penny is made of copper. The vinegar, acetic acid from the paper towel helps the copper in penny easily reacts with the oxygen in the air to form a green coating. I can also conclude the rusting does not make things shinier. And this is some of the pennies that turn green. Here is one that turned green right here, and then you just need vinegar and salt and a paper towel. It's my project.
What happens when you put a battery in water? Research. Water is a chemical compound that contains one oxygen and 2 hydrogen atoms. So it has the chemical formula H2O. A battery is a container that holds electrons using chemicals that let them out when you connect them in the right way. The electrons flow from the negative side to the positive side when they are connected by wires or even with water. The electrons split apart the water into 2 elements that make water up, or like what water is. My hypothesis. I think that the electricity will travel into the water from the battery and separate the hydrogen from the oxygen. Experiment. We hooked up 2 pieces of carbon to a 9-volt battery with alligator clips. One piece of carbon was connected to the positive side and another was connected to the negative side. We used carbon because it is a great conductor of electricity, which is why it is used in batteries. My dad took them out of 2 small batteries. We put the carbon pieces connected to the battery in a glass of filtered water and saw what happened. Then we did the same thing, only except we put a little salt in the water.
Wow.
During the last experiment, we put a lot of salt in the water and saw what happens. Also, on each of the 3 experiments, we put a lighter on the surface of the water near each carbon piece because hydrogen is an explosive gas and it is coming up from the water, so we wanted to see if there is a reaction. Analysis. On the first experiment, some hydrogen bubbles were coming up from the piece of carbon. There is not a lot, but there is definitely hydrogen being released from the water. The hydrogen was coming from the black wire, which was the negatively charged wire. I knew it was hydrogen coming out of that one because when we held the lighter next to the black one, I could hear a pop and a sizzle. I knew the oxygen was coming out of the red wire, which was the positively charged wire, because when we held the lighter to that, it had no effect. For the second experiment, we added some salt to the water, which allows it to conduct electricity better. When we put the carbon in, there's definitely a bigger amount of hydrogen and oxygen bubbles coming up. Then we put the lighter to the black carbon piece, and it was a louder pop and lots of crackling when the hydrogen was reacting with the flame. For the third experiment, we put a whole bunch of salt in the water. When we put the carbon pieces in there, there was waves of hydrogen and oxygen bubbles coming up. When we put the lighter to the glass, even before the flame touched to the surface, I could hear the crackle and pop of the hydrogen reacting. Conclusion. It turns out that my hypothesis was correct. When I put the negative and positively charged pieces of carbon in the water, there was oxygen and hydrogen splitting up and rising with thickness. And I have some pictures of what we did. So this is just the alligator clips connected to the battery. The red is the oxygen, black is the hydrogen coming up. And then this is the filtered water. And then this is the black one that has hydrogen coming up. These little bits of hydrogen coming up from there. This is the little salt with more bubbles of hydrogen coming up. And then this one is with lots of salt. And you can see the tip of the alligator tip is like almost engulfed with bubbles of hydrogen coming up.